achieve a cessation of suffering, the misery. And therefore, the first noble truth is to be understand. Then the second question, yes, I do understand the nature of suffering. I can see it. But how it come? It is by nature, or it is given by something external force, or it is incident or coincident. We examine it. It is not a causeless, nor it is given by external conditions. It is the result of, as we mentioned before, the bondage of action, and the cause of action, the mental defaultment. Our mind is deeply conditioned by the ignorance. Ignorance means not perceiving, not seeing how the things exist. We dilute the existence of all phenomena in a different way. And that is the real cause of all the subsequent mental developments. As I mentioned before, the conditioning mind always perceives the I, the self, as if it exists by its own inherent nature without depending on any cause and conditions or any dependency to anything else. In the Indian spiritual tradition, there are two ways of expressing it: to understand the self or to negate the self. The Buddhists used to say, you must negate the self as you conceive of now. The Sanatana Dharma tradition says, you must realize the self as it is. What you are conceiving yourself as of now is not the seeing of the real self. Apparently, it is a contradictory statement, but in reality, both of these, either self exists, self do not exist. The Atmavad, the Niratmavad, who says there is Atma, or who says there is no Atma, both of them trying to convey the same message. What we conceive of self as of now is not the real self. On the contrary, the delusion of mind, the ignorance of mind, have constructed a self which does not exist. Invariably, in English language, it is also used the term of ego. But sometimes the connotation of ego goes little different way, but by and large, this misconception of self can be referred as ego. What happens then? The illusory mind conceives an independent existence of I or the self without relating to any other thing, without depending on any other thing. That creates a hold upon, a grasping upon a non-existent self, and which excludes the rest of the phenomenon out of the self. Then I and mine become a part, and there and theirs is become a different part. A division is created. This divisive delusion is cause of all the karmic force. It may be something positive or negative or neutral. All these are come out of the divisive. This divisive view creates the attachment and the hate. Attachment to I and mine, and hate to the other and the others. So this divisive view is only due to not able to perceive the interdependently existence of the I and the other. The I can never be exist without depending on the others. The others as well cannot exist without depending or without relating to the others or to oneself. So this is called interdependent arising principle. Everything exists interdependently originated. If you see the interdependently originated, then division between I and the other will not arise. The view would be inclusive of everything. The view shall not be exclusive of anything. The inclusive way of looking at the things and the exclusive way of looking at the things are the crucial point where the division and the conflict arises, or where the division and conflict can be avoided. If you have a view of interdependent arising, then you must have a view of inclusiveness. In that inclusiveness, there's no room for hate and division. Everything shall have to be proceed with cooperation, not conflict and struggling. That division view which creates the attachment and hate always lead to accumulation of harming, violence, and domination, injustice, all these things accumulates negative action. These negative actions give imprint on the basis of consciousness, which will give result into the future time. So by this way, the causality of suffering become endless. Therefore, the second truth, the cause of suffering, which is need to be destroyed, which need to be eliminated. So Buddha have told his 5 disciples, when you realize the fact or the reality of suffering, you will have a desire to put an end to it. And if you have a desire, aspiration to put an end to it, you must search from where it's coming. What is the real cause of the suffering? As I mentioned before, it is accidental, natural, or given by external forces, none of them. It is your own deeds which are being accomplished by the default mind of hate and attachment. Both the hate and attachment arises from ignorance of the real nature of self. And therefore the ignorance shall have to be eradicated, eliminated. The cause of suffering must be eliminated, and it's possible. When the disciples have seen the nature of suffering and the cause of suffering, naturally they will have an desire, aspiration to eliminate the cause of suffering, to put an end to the action. The cause of action is attachment and hate, that to be eliminated. And to eliminate that, you need to eliminate the ignorance of self, ignorance of the others. And how to eliminate the ignorance? You shall have to awake the wisdom, the intelligence, which is already in the form of seed within yourself, and you shall have to awake that. For the awakening of that wisdom, you have to follow the path. Cessation of the cause of suffering is to be achieved through some means, and without that means adopted, by wishful thinking alone cannot put end to your ignorance. And therefore, the third reality of the path comes from the fourth, but in the sequence I come here in the third, and by which the eradication of the root cause of karmic force, the action, and the cause of karmic force, the mental defaultment, can put an end. And how to practice the path. The third or the fourth truth, how to practice the path, has been described in the form of threefold education. How you can awake your inner wisdom. You can awake your inner wisdom if you are able to consolidate your mind to a one-pointed concentration. At this moment, our ordinary mind is always scattered, multifariously going away with so many thought processes. We can never be one pointed attention to one object. You are very attentively doing something, listening to a music or writing a letter. You might think that I am concentrative on one point. But if you watch it carefully, at that moment also, your thought is chattering a great deal. Your thought process always goes, and many things conceives by the thought. And that means you are never been able to achieve full force of attention. We may take a metaphor of water supply. If water supply is scattered everywhere, you will not have a good water in your bathroom. If there are 4, 5, 7 different taps and you keep all these taps open, then the force will be very, very less. And you shut all the rest of the points and make only one point open, then water would be very forceful. Our mind is similar like that. We are not able to concentrate on the one point. For that purpose, you have to practice concentrative meditation. Concentrative meditation can give you a consolidation of your attention. And when you achieve the consolidation of your attention, then there is no difficult for awakening of your inner wisdom. That's how the second fold of education of the concentrative mind. And to achieve such concentrative mind and a mind which is completely free from scatteredness, that is a result of long-term practice of meditation. And for such practice of meditation, you need the first education of moral conduct, a positive way of life. If your way of life is not pure and positive, you cannot practice the meditation. Enable to anyone to practice meditative process, you must have a number of moral code of conduct and discipline. So that is the first education. In the Buddhist Sanskrit terminology, it is called the Shila, the Samadhi, and the Prajna. Shila is moral conduct, way of life. Samadhi is the meditative mind. You are able to concentrate on one point. And if you achieve these two, then the third stage, awakening of wisdom, the insight, will be almost automatic, quite for sure. So this threefold education is called as a path. First, you must have a positive way of life, no violence, peaceful, caring for others, and utilizing the commodities or things on the basis of need. An humane individual must remain user of resources. In the ancient time, most of the humanity are user of resources. But we have lost that capacity. Today, each one of us, not user, we are consumer. We just consume the resources. And when we begin to consume the resources, we lost the understanding of need. And we just go after greed. And the greed has no end. Resources are limited and greed is unlimited. That's why the Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi has said a very beautiful sentence. The Mother Earth can satisfy can fully satisfy each one of the living creatures on it. But the entire earth can never be satisfied as single person's greed. So without remaining a user of resources, as and when we become consumer of resources, our way of life becomes impure, violent one. Anyone who is desirous of leading a spiritual journey, the first and foremost step is to examine our way of life. And once the way of life is within the moral codes are so many different ways, but from the Buddhist viewpoint, the basic moral code is to remain non-violent. directly or indirectly not causing violence to any other. That is the yardstick of a positive way of life. If you have a positive way of life, then you will have the inner and outer conditions of meditation. Then the system of meditation, any system you can adopt according to your own suitability. But the system must be studied thoroughly, and if possible must have a guidance. Without guidance, only from book knowledge, sometimes it becomes dangerous. There is chance you may succeed or you may go wrong. So therefore, in the beginners of meditator, better to have a qualified guidance. Then practice meditation, you will achieve the concentrative mind, which is called in Buddhist terminology, shamat, concentrative mind. Once you achieve that power, then it will be very easy for you to analyze the conception of independent ego, independent I. And when you analyze, you will see very easily the non-existence of the ego, non-existence of the independent, inherently by its nature, by its own nature, existence of I. The I is being constructed through so many dependency way, interrelated way. Once the interrelated I is perceived, then we will able to relate ourselves to the entirety of the universe. And once our relations have become in a proper way, that is the wisdom. Wisdom means to see and to know the things as they exist, not projected by our thought. And when you see the things as they exist, then it will give you how to relate with the entire universe. And the proper relationship is the peace, the positive and purity. And something relationship is in a way of destructive or conflict, then all the result would be in that way. So for the proper understanding of relationship is perhaps the basic teaching of Buddha. You perceive the relationship and you are able to relate yourself in an appropriate way, then you are free. That freedom is called the third noble truth, the cessation of the suffering, dukh nirodha satya. So this is in a very nutshell, we can sum up the teaching of Four Noble Truth, the truth of suffering and its cause, one set of causality, the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering, or it can also cause the cause of cessation of suffering. That makes a second set of causality. And this is on the basis of ground